Welcome to Birken Monastery's live stream. I'm Ajahn Sona, and we do this so that you have an opportunity for live questions and answers. Some of these are pre-submitted, but feel free to address any questions in the commentaries there. And we will start with question number 1. Please, Pia.
Ajahn, our first question is a live one from Covido from Kamloops, British Columbia, Canada. What is the karmic consequence for the individual of making inappropriate, rude, unskillful, or demeaning comments while participating in online forums or chats?
It's the same as wrong speech, and the fact that this is sort of because people are anonymous sometimes, or they are in a non-social setting. They feel at liberty to express themselves in a different way, more emotionally. And also, of course, some people speak this way as well, so they're inappropriate in their speech and also in their writing. But some people are quite social and elegant in their speech, but when it comes to writing in an anonymous forum, they feel like they can let it rip. Well, there are consequences. And the first consequence is immediate, and that's that you're appealing to a part of you that is channeling anger, really. And so this is unwise attention. So you're not realizing that you're cultivating a certain habit of vision when you use harsh language. And you're not contributing to the civilization of the world either. You're contributing to the opposite. So this is how things get going, isn't it? You can see it in a domestic dispute, or even in a fight in a bar. It's just a few unskillful words start this thing rolling. So we have to be considerate and realize that you have a voice, especially with media like this. So right now, I'm talking to people all over the world. And this is a new capacity because of access to media and free access to media through computers. So this is a new stage of maybe even more care in terms of speech. So even one is anonymous, one is still obliged. And the question was, are there karmic consequences? By the way, when we use the word karmic, K-A-M-M-I-C, we don't mean comic as in C-O-M-I-C. we mean karma, and that is cause and effect in the moral dimension. And things tend to come back to you. And they come back often in amplified ways. So one should have a sense that not only in the moment are you experiencing negative emotions when expressing these things, but that in the future, so the Buddha talks about this. In some of the suttas you see the consequences of certain types of speech. And demeaning speech comes back to you as a reduced position in the world. A demeaning and demeaning speech will come back to you. You will be. Do you notice that some people seem to just draw negative speech? It's hard to understand why. Sometimes their behavior is all right, but people speak in a rough, harsh way to them, and others seem to draw polite speech or praise, all of these things. So there are consequences in time for right speech. The other area is that 20 years from now, you may look back and think, I was a fool. I kind of thought I could get away with it. But it comes back to your conscience. You feel like you should have expressed yourself better. And this is what happens as you develop along the path. You regret past unskillful actions, and that interferes with your well-being and happiness now. That's something to reflect on, though, is we emphasize what's called remorse in the West. So a person who commits a crime goes to jail and they can't get out until they express remorse. Remorse is a kind of a guilty conscience and negative emotions over something they did. Buddhism doesn't encourage that. What they encourage is expressing a positive present and future attitude. So one should determine if you regret your speech, either on these internet forums and so forth, what you should do is just determine that in the present and in the future that your written word and your speech will be improved and will conform with right speech, something that is positive, true, beneficial, insightful, sharing of information. Those are good things. And so you determine to do that. And you determine to do that with a phrase, this kind of phrase is that others will be rude, spread disinformation and misinformation. I shall not. And no matter what the atmosphere of it, you must restrain yourself. And you contribute in a positive way. So with truth and beneficial information is what you're aiming at. And whatever the atmosphere in those forums, you will not go there. Others will, you shall not. Sophia, next question.
Our next question is from Jessie Farquhar from Los Angeles, California, United States. I find it easier to generate a feeling of goodwill and then assign it afterward, kind of like being in love, peacefully, like by the ocean. May this feeling apply to all beings? Am I on the right track? It seems kind of backwards.
Well, if that's not backwards at all. It's frontwards. Loving kindness is a goal, and how you get there, there are a variety of techniques. And what's most important is, does it work? So if the feeling of being on the beach in, is it San Francisco? Los Angeles would be even better. So being on the beach in Los Angeles brings up a feeling of love for you. That's great. Now just extend it to more beings, including the seagulls and the homeless and everybody on the beach, and then out through the yellow smoggy skies of Los Angeles to all of the burning skies of California, all the way up to British Columbia right here, and through the heavy smoky skies, and then throughout the world. And if you're interested in the development of loving kindness, on our YouTube channel, we have whole loving kindness retreats, dozens of talks on loving kindness. And you'll see that it's about being creative. A lot of techniques that are taught by lay teachers and monks, quite often very wooden, formulaic, repeat after me, may all beings be well, may all beings be well. It's kind of dry and formulaic and robotic. That's not the way this emotion works. If you need poetry, use it. If you need music, use it. If you need memories, use them. If you need imagination, use it. So this is not watching the breath. This is an act of imagination and memory and creativity. And you need to find out something that moves you, because this is a deeply moving experience, and it's an emotional experience. So you need to use means to get there. hopefully once you get there, you don't need the words anymore. You don't need the memories anymore. You don't need the imagination anymore. You walk around saturated in this. You walk around in the feeling, and you see the world differently. When you're walking around with an open heart of goodwill, kindness, understanding, everything appears differently. And you will respond differently to every situation as well, in a much more lucid way. By the way, this emotion helps you navigate through life. It makes you make good decisions in your relationships and with what you want to do with your life as well. So it's very important. So however you can get it, it's a personal thing. So if that works for you, Jesse, is it? Did you say? Jesse, yeah. If that works for you, do it. Keep it up. Pia.
Ajahn, our next question is live from Shauna Gunderson. How do you know if you're ready to commit oneself to be an Upasika?
So this word Upasika, we use this, it's a Pali word, and it's an indication of a layperson who is quite dedicated and wishes to associate closely with the ordained Sangha and the Dhamma, the Buddha's committed Buddhist lay follower is what it is. One who comes close to the monastics and one who abides in the teachings of the Buddha. So deciding how to do that or when to do that is, well, of course I can recommend it. It's up to you, though, to make it authentic. It's not just a nominal kind of practice where you identify as a Buddhist. So lots of people do, actually. You know that Buddhism in history, at one point in history, was the largest religious philosophy on the planet. And it spread out through all of Asia when most of the population of the world lived in Asia. And it took all kinds of forms. You see whole countries filled with temples and Buddha images and, of course, books full of Buddha quotes and prompted by, he's one of the perhaps most well-known figures in history. Maybe Jesus and Buddha and the Beatles are the most famous in history. If you're younger than 30, you won't get what I just said about the Beatles. You won't remember what they said about Jesus and the Buddhists. So the Buddha is pervasive, and hardly anybody has not heard of the Buddha. It's amazing. I have given talks in elementary schools and in junior high schools, and they invite me to give a talk to them about Buddhism, and I ask who has heard of the Buddha, and they virtually a bunch of 13-year-olds in Canada, they all have heard of the Buddha. And then I ask, have you heard of Socrates? And hardly any of them have heard of Socrates. Then I asked, who's the prime minister? And a lot of them can't name the prime minister. So the Buddha is remarkably well known in the world, and lots of people regard themselves as sort of Buddhist, but they might be surprised to find out that they really aren't. And to up the dedication and the information and the knowledge and the commitment is rewarding. So if you're wanting to be a true Upasika, one who comes close to the Buddha, to the Dhamma, to the Sangha, it will be greatly rewarding for you. And it will saturate your inner life. And of course, it's a rich experience. And it's hard to understand how actually intense and rich it can become. But so I encourage you to explore that and to deepen that. and to check us out as well. We have an online Upasika course, and each year we have new groups that join it all over the world. It's really quite amazing with this technology that we can communicate throughout the world and give a thorough training course for Upasikas. And we've had several generations now of them, a generation being a year. And so we have hundreds of Upasikas now around the world. And so inquire into that, and feel free to communicate with us and see if you can join an Upasika group as well. Okay, Pia, next question.
Our next question is from John, Richmond-on-Thames in Surrey, United Kingdom. Is it wiser to embody Dhamma rather than attempt to define it precisely? An alternative or ancillary question: is the path to gradually become that which already is?
Well, the first part, I'll deal with the first part of your question about experiencing it rather than intellectually understanding it. And of course, it's really about experiencing. The ideas and definitions are only to lead to that. There's a kind of Buddhist saying, to know and not to do is not to know. So we don't want to leave this in the abstract definition area. We want to become it. We want to be it. We want to embody it. We want to feel it. It is the center from which we see the universe. And so that is very, very important to understand that. This is not about ideas. And in my early explorations of Buddhism, I was thinking that it's like anything else. It's an idea. And I read through the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and some dependent origination and thought, cool ideas. And so it's only the realization of this is how do you internalize this? The second part of your question is, are we coming back to something that's already there? Or are we going to create something, or is it realizing that it's already there? And that makes me suspect that you have been exposed to perhaps the non-dual traditions. There's what's called Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Hindu type teachings, and then there's certain non-dual Buddhist teachings, which encourage that sense of that you're kind of already there, but you don't know it. So Theravada is not along those lines. It's not that you're already a Buddha and you're just realizing that. It's a development and a progress, and it's not already there. I would say one thing that the Buddha talks about: if and when the mind is unharassed, is not troubled by what we would call the psychic irritants, the hindrances, emotional distress, that it returns to a lucid kind of condition. And he compares it to water. That water can be mixed with all kinds of different pollutants. Water can be boiling. Water can have oil on its surface. Water can be stagnant. Water can be muddy. But none of those things are water. Water is intrinsically pure, and the mind, when the hindrances have been removed, returns to its watery nature. It's lucid, cool, clear, and luminous. There's a beautiful Pali word, pabasara, luminous, light. But it's not that way until the hindrances have been removed. But this is it's sort of its basic nature towards which we move. So this is the process, and this is what is the path, is to remove these impediments to luminosity. And don't take that too seriously. It's really not about lights. It's about the lightness, the clarity of the heart, and so forth. High, beautiful emotional conditions, which can be sustained, or which can be sort of the base line of your emotional life. So that's, in brief, a little bit response to that question. Let's have another question, Pia.
Our next question is live from Tyler Spruill from Chicago, Illinois. How often and for how long should I meditate in order to achieve Samadhi? Thank you, Ajahn Sona. Your teaching is invaluable.
Yeah, it's not a matter of... I was a musician a long time ago. By the way, monks are not supposed to play music, etc. So I don't play the guitar anymore. But 35 years ago or so, I used to. And so I was very interested in this question of practice, how much in order to get results. And there was a great sort of pop guitarist who I suppose is still alive, John McLaughlin, who was asked, how much do you practice? And he said, until I get it. And it's not about hours, it's until you get it. And so it's, in order to cultivate Samadhi is like becoming very proficient on a musical instrument. It's the musician doesn't ask how long, they ask how good, how close, how beautiful is it? And so whatever it takes in terms of time. Now some people get it easily and quickly, and others it's a long struggle. And along the way you have to have some rewards and results. So you should, of course, listen to various talks I've given on this subject of Samadhi. And one thing that makes it easier, of course, is to cultivate loving kindness, goodwill, metta in Pali, so that the mind is softened up and brought to some state of ease before one tries to deeply focus on subtle objects like the breath. So it's very helpful. And of course, another preliminary condition is to straighten out one's speech and action. So virtue precedes Samadhi. The path, the whole Eightfold Path, is usually described briefly, in brief, as virtue, concentration, and wisdom. Sila, Samadhi, Panya. And virtue is the basis for the arising of this clarified, serene, lucid mind, which is Samadhi. And Samadhi is the basis for the arising of understanding, which is wisdom. So you want to put those in order, and you want to cultivate it like that. And you want to forget about how much time it takes, because whatever time it takes, it's worth it in the end. To live with a distracted, harassed mind is never worth it. The Buddha says that better it is to cultivate the path and experience it for a minute than 100 years of uninformed life, 100 years of ignorance. A minute of this is worth 100 years of pointless wandering in negative emotions. Yes, Pia. Next question.
Our next question is from Emmanuel from Munich, Germany. Ajahn, have you considered making videos of commentaries to select suttas?
I had not, but I think it's a very good suggestion. And we do have time in front of us for making such things. And I don't really, some of my retreats go into the details of suttas. So you can see that I've done a whole 10-day retreat on the sutta on mindfulness, the Satipatthana Sutta. And so there I would, basically that's both the sutta and a commentary that is 10 hours long. And then of course the metta retreat. So I took 2 suttas in the metta retreat. One is the primary sutta on loving kindness. And then the second one is the 11 benefits of loving kindness. And those 2 suttas I talked about for 10 days in a row. And every nuance and aspect of each line and each word in there. So I have done this with sort of central cardinal suttas. And by the way, sutta, it's sutta in Pali and sutra in Sanskrit. So for those who are used to words like dharma and sutra, in Pali, the Theravada tradition, it's sutta and kama and Dhamma rather than dharma. So it is good, and there are many suttas to explore, and perhaps I will get to that. Right now, our main constant production is this weekly question and answer period, which is a form of commentary. So as I'm responding to this, I'm also responding out of my knowledge of the suttas, but also commentaries on the suttas. And commentaries, by the way, are not fixed in time. Commentaries are simply the opinions of monks in previous times. So this very talk that I'm giving right now is a commentary, because I'm a monk and I'm giving nuanced opinions about Dhamma issues. And so that's exactly what a commentary is. So, and it's as valid as one given 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago or 1,500 years ago. At the same time, we regard the actual words of the Buddha as kind of the primary source, and the commentaries don't override, replace, or distort the teachings of the Buddha, but they actually articulate and clarify the basic teachings of the Buddha. So thank you for that suggestion, and perhaps we will take it up more in future, but I do want to clarify that we are in some ways doing commentary all the time.
Ajahn, our next question is live from Jacob from Estonia. Dear Ajahn, it seems that lay people who progress to stream entry are uncommon. What are successful lay practitioners doing differently than the others?
Yes, and it's very hard to get statistics on stream enterers or any stage of enlightenment. You get a wild ideas. There's all kinds of people declaring themselves to be enlightened, and in different traditions. I do believe that I've given a talk on the stages, the 4 stages of enlightenment on the YouTube channel, so you might want to check that out. First of all, mostly it's just defining each stage of enlightenment, including what a sotapanna, which you mentioned, a stream enterer, is. Now that's the first stage of enlightenment. And the Buddha defines that, tries to give a clear understanding of that. This is a transformation of your view of reality, and it affects you at an emotional level and at a continuous emotional level, and it sets up boundaries in your moral dimension which cannot be overridden. And so this makes you a virtuous person, who has a certain level of clarity and understanding about existence and your relationship to other beings. And perhaps as we see that highly virtuous, trustworthy people are not a dime a dozen, that it requires conscious effort, that it's not just a where you're born or what family you're from or any of these other things. There's a special inquiry, a personality tendency that produces this. So you're going to have to labor on the path in order to achieve this state of sotapanna. Now, what is it about the people who have attained sotapanna? What makes them different than people who have not? And perhaps the first thing is to just get good teachings, so lucid directions. If you don't get the right map, you're not going to end up in the right place. So this is what the Buddha says is like you need clear teachings, and this is the value of teachers. Buddhism is a kind of a do-it-yourself religion. You don't just get grace descended upon you from God, and so it's a requirement for understanding and self-effort. So people tend to think, oh, it's a do-it-yourself. But no, the teacher and teachings are very valuable. The Buddha has a talk about this, the nature of the teacher in a student's life as pointing the way, until you internalize the understandings that the teacher has as well. Not everybody, any teacher is suitable for any student. One needs to find the right teacher for one's personality as well. This is like in other areas of life, music and so forth. One benefits from certain teachers and one doesn't benefit from others. So this is the good instructions, clarity, and primarily a full understanding of the Noble Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths is the primary requisite. And this requires real internalization. And if those things are available and there's potential on the part of the person who's hearing these things, then they can attain enlightenment. But if they're misdirected or don't have the information, it's very unlikely they will. So these are the requirements. And this is, of course, motivation for making these kind of video talks so that they can go all over the world. You're speaking from Estonia, and the person before you was in UK, and then there was one in Los Angeles, and it's amazing. So we have a very unique opportunity at this time to communicate, and I'm particularly interested in communicating the essential teachings of the Buddha from the Theravada, the early suttas tradition, and making them available. So, next question, Pia.
Ajahn, this next question is from Brian in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, and it somewhat ties in with the last question you had. I have trouble wrapping my head around the enormity of the Buddhist path to Nibbana. How much progress is it practical for an individual to make in their lifetime? For example, Upandita suggests Sotapanna as a goal. What milestones or signs can they use to know that progress is being made?
Yes, it can. So one needs to not get lost in the vast ideas of the Pali Canon and actually get down to some systematic preliminary work. And that is to first go over numerous times the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, and to straighten out one's virtue and conduct in life. So it's very practical. It's like, what did you say this morning? How did you behave? How will you behave? How have you determined to maintain your precepts? And then secondly, do you make an earnest study of the teachings? Now you mentioned Upandita, so you're familiar already with some of the teachings. And it's best not to go into the higher end of the path, the astonishing sort of ideas of the nature of the higher mind too soon, because it seems it's extremely exceptional what they're describing. Aside from what we would call supernormal psychic capacities, those should just be set aside to begin with. They're not really comprehensible until you're well along the path, and they're not that important. What's important is the emotional well-being at the center of your life. And so lots of people are distracted by these things. It seems to be exceptional knowledges about mystical things, but it's not mystical. It's the human existence is a mystery. The fact that you're walking around and that you feel a certain way is a mystical experience. And this is the only mystery that matters. How do you feel? How are you in your life? Are you well? How is your fear and anxiety? If we can diminish that fear and anxiety, if we can give you lucidity and clarity and well-being and positive emotions, that is a miracle. That is the mystery. The problem is greed, hatred, and delusion. And that's easy to find out about. That's easy to see. There's no, and then the solutions to those are generosity, kindness, and clarity. And you can find, that's not so far away, that's not so mystical. You can find people who are generous and kind and lucid. And you will have some degree of generosity, kindness, and lucidity coming up in your life. And that's where you want to keep your eye. You want to keep your eye on that, so that it's not an overwhelming mass of information. That it is, if you keep your eye on, on these issues of kindness, generosity, kindness, and clarity, and a high concern for the removal of greed, hatred, delusion, you will be on the path, and it will inevitably lead in that direction. And it won't be such a monumental and mysterious path. It will be part of your everyday life, and that's what matters. It's your everyday life in Winnipeg as you walk down the street or at the corner of Portage in Maine at 50 below zero, whether you can remain generous, kind, and clear. Yeah. Yeah, next.
Our next question is live from Douglas Bennett in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Dear Ajahn, is sadness considered a hindrance? If so, which hindrance does it fall under? Or is it considered, quote, an unwholesome state under right effort? Thank you.
Yeah, there's various flavors of sadness. Some are very, really forms of loving kindness, and if it's a positive form of loving kindness, then it has a emotional taste to it, which is not negative. So it's positive. It's the ability to feel empathy with others, etc. So, but there is other forms of sadness which are negative, and they are primarily aversive. So you don't like the situation, you object to the situation. So when we, one of the things that is going to happen to us is we're going to lose things that we love. We're going to lose everything that we love, that is pleasing to us. And most people react with sadness, which is another way of saying, I don't like this. I don't want that to happen. I'm surprised and disappointed in the universe. And this is not a very good way to live, because the universe doesn't care if you approve of it. It takes everything away from you. And that kind of sadness is a full dimension of, it's unsatisfactory, and it's painful. It's dukkha, painful. So it's for you to sort through the subtleties and flavors of what this word, arbitrary word, means to you. And some of them, excuse me, some of these emotions are actually rich and fairly beautiful. And if it's a rich and beautiful and non-harmful emotion, and it might be, the word sadness might be used for it, it's all right. But if it's negative, painful, if you're grieving, sorrowing, etc., these are classic definitions which the Buddha gives as something to be left behind and to transcend. So this is how to sort this out without being too rigid. Like, it's very, it's easy to get to confuse Buddhist attitudes with having no emotion. But then we have, of course, an advocacy of this beautiful emotions of loving kindness, of compassion, of sympathetic enjoyment of others' happiness. And then we have this equanimity, which doesn't mean that you are frozen in ice. It means that you are a balanced person, able to walk through the ups and downs of life without losing your balance, but remaining sensitive. Just briefly, also, compassion from a Buddhist point of view is very different than normal ideas of compassion. So usually in the West, compassion, and this I think comes from Christian ideas of compassion, is to suffer with those who are suffering. But in Buddhism, it is not that case. It is to have loving kindness for those who are suffering. So compassion in this case is not sadness, sorrow, grief. It is loving kindness for the suffering world. But it is response to the suffering world, warm response to the suffering world. Yeah. Okay, next question.
Our next question is from Cheryl Kling from Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, United States. What should one do if an animal is badly injured or so ill that a veterinarian recommends euthanasia to end its suffering? Would doing so violate the precepts?
This is a question fairly often asked, and Buddhism has a very different approach to these things than you find in sort of contemporary West. Buddhism does not advocate the euthanasia, either of animals or of humans. And so this is important at this time in life, because lots of new attitudes towards the ending of human lives as well are on the ballot box. And the West has long had an idea that animals should just simply be put out of their suffering. It's not a good idea for the person who is supposed to do this. You have to formulate the intention to kill another conscious living being and then go ahead and do it. And there are consequences to this in one's psyche to make those decisions and carry them out. People have the idea that you're being kind by doing this, but there's a lot of confusion. It is a confused subject in the West. But Buddhism says, like, the moment you're born, you're subject to suffering. Like, stuff happens, illness happens, pain happens, and you can't just get out of it by killing it, killing yourself or others. And you see, there's a lot of confusion around this because people are very shocked and saddened by people's suicide, but if the person has the idea they're going to get out of suffering, then why are you shocked and saddened by it? And at the same time, they put animals to sleep. They use all these metaphors for what's actually happening. So the primary attitude is absolute confusion in the West. The primary attitude from Buddhist point of view is life is painful and difficult sometimes, and death is not the solution to this. Wisdom is the solution. Tolerance is the solution. Loving kindness is the solution. And of course, medicine is the solution as well. Like, a reduction of pain in the body is very welcome, medicines, etc. But death is not an actual solution to the situation of life. Now, I go into this, watch a video called Maranasati, which I made just a few months ago, about the nature of death and people's attitudes to it, and what they think it is, and what the kind of half-formulated ideas they have around this thing called death, so that you can find it in more detail. In this brief time, I don't have time to really explore it, but essentially, it is not to kill as a relief from suffering for animals or for humans. That's the Buddhist attitude. Next question.
Our next question is live from Benedict Kafkane. Your unique approach to feeling breath in the nasal cavity, does it have any historical background? Where and from whom and which circumstances led you to this approach?
Well, actually, so there is a question, an essay which I've written 25 years ago called The Mystery of the Breath Nimitta. And it is because of this, having, when you first come to Buddhism, you come in, maybe a teacher, a lay teacher or a monk is giving you instructions, and you just presume, oh, this is Buddhism, whatever, and you just follow it. But as you go along and you hear different versions of it, then you start to, well, where does this come from? And then you eventually get to the suttas, the word of the Buddha. And then it's a massive collection, 45 volumes, about the size of the Encyclopedia Britannica. And where do you start? So I looked through the entire thing, and especially as regards to certain meditation techniques. And you look for these, in breath meditation, you look for the location. And what you find is controversy and different takes on it, and that the actual words in Pali and in translations are something to be closely examined, because there are schools which interpret these things differently. So I really had to take some time to inquire into this and to look at what did the Buddha mean about the location of the breath. And this took me into the commentaries. And one of the most influential commentaries in the Theravada Buddhist world is called the Visuddhimagga. And it is quite a late commentary. It's 1,000 years after the passing away of the Buddha. It's the 5th century AD. So it has greatly influenced the practice of breath meditation. But there are earlier versions, and there's a lot of strange celebration of the Visuddhimagga as a product of the genius of Buddhaghosa, the apparent author of this. But when you inquire more deeply, you find earlier commentaries, and one of them is called the Vimuttimagga. Now, notice the parallel. Visuddhimagga, 5th century AD. Vimuttimagga, about 1st century AD, 400 or 500 years before. It's half the length of the Visuddhimagga, and the Visuddhimagga is obviously modeled on this. We might even say that the Visuddhimagga is just an expansion, an addition to the Vimuttimagga. And you see you see an approach to the breath that has gone off into a different direction with the Visuddhimagga from the time of the Vimuttimagga. And the descriptions in the Vimuttimagga are much more sensible to me and closer to the time of the Buddha in terms of where to experience the breath. So the next thing that I would encourage you to do is look at my breath meditation, Anapanasati talks. And there we articulate the similes that the Buddha gives for the experience of the breath, and how the commentaries talk about the experience of the breath. And we go to great lengths to actually find illustrations from the time of the Buddha, because some of the similes are to do with spinning cotton. But you have to, how did they spin cotton at the time of the Buddha in the 5th century BC? You have to find out how they did this in order to understand breath meditation. If you don't have the historical, if you can't make sense of the similes, and the Buddha communicates through similes. Similes are like pictures rather than ideas, pictures and events in the world that you can relate this to. So we go into some great trouble to communicate this clearly. This, by the way, is part of my jhana series. This is where you will find it. So go onto the YouTube channel, Ajahn Sona YouTube channel. Go to the jhana series, which is, I think is six talks. And in there, we went to great trouble to find examples to illustrate what the Buddhist texts and commentaries were saying in pictures and in videos. So I've gone to the ends of the earth to try to articulate why I choose to use the nasal cavity as the area of the breath. And also read the essay, The Mystery of the Breath Nimitta. And it's on our website. And part of that essay, there's a little second part of that essay, which is called Location, 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 which has to do with where is the breath felt. And it goes into this, unraveling this issue of the various types of spins and interpretations of how to understand breath meditation. So, next question, Pia. Mm-hmm. And perhaps closing in on the last one, isn't it?
I think this is our final question for today. This is a live question from Temnavod. Would you have any advice for someone who would like to live a monastic-like life, but at this time cannot ordain? Any concrete advice about how to structure one's life, etc.?
Yes, and that's a noble aspiration, and many people these days have that. I think we're quite unique, and I don't know where Tem is from, Western perhaps. There is a kind of a unique situation in modern times. People have less children, smaller families, and a lot of people are not in a family. They're kind of drifting around. We live longer, we have more resources, we have more independence, and we have also, of course, easy exposure to Dhamma now that not everybody had in the past, so this very experience that we're having. So you can really have quite a full, almost monastic kind of life as a lay person. if you can arrange your circumstances in the right way, you can benefit greatly. And in modern times, I would recommend it. So how you do it is saturate yourself with Dhamma talks. Go to Ajahn Sona's YouTube channel. There's 172, or maybe now 173 videos on there. Watch them all 5 times. And let them reshape how you approach life. And I will have, there will be a number of them which describe my own process in life as a layperson and as a monastic, how I approached it. And I'm telling these stories. There's a 3-part series on 32 years as a monk, which helps I'm trying to communicate to this almost my former self, like advice to my younger self, how to proceed through life if you have an aspiration towards the monastic life, how to not waste your time until you get there, but to use your time wisely as you're moving towards that possibility. You may or may not ever get into the robes, but a lot of good work can be done before that time. So listen to some of those talks and try to let it help you shape your lay life in an optimal way. One thing, and there's 2 things you want to avoid. One is an inappropriate attempt to live as a monk while you're a layperson. So some things that are good for monks are not good for lay people to do, and you have to know the difference. And on the other hand, not to neglect the possibilities of your lay life practice and to fall into casual, lazy kind of ways. You have to find the middle path between these 2 things. Not to inappropriately live as a monk while you're in the lay life, and not to inappropriately live indulgently in the lay life either. So find out where that line is. And the Buddha has articulated quite a few nice suggestions for lay people who want to progress and aspire to higher things in this life. And some of this may lead you eventually to the monastic life as well. So I think that wraps it up for today. Birken Monastery's live stream, question and answers. And we will be back next week on Sunday at 9 Pacific time. And feel free to submit questions in the future as well, if you're so inclined. Goodbye.